What do you think motivated him to create the largest Ponzi scheme of all time? $65 billion.
Okay, so Bernie had been the son of a man who had come from nothing, had built a small business, and the small business had gone belly up.
Mm-hmm.
And they had been living in, a fairly, middle-class neighborhood when the business had been picking up steam. And when he went bankrupt, they had to sell everything and move to a more down-market neighborhood. And he described the humiliation associated with that. And I think that he vowed that that was never going to happen to him. So when he started his early trading business in the 60s, I think he had like a $30,000 business that was up and running. And there was a little mini market correction. And he had promised his investors that the business model for those investments was something very, very conservative. And in fact, he'd made some very risky investments, even at that early stage. And when when it was all lost, he borrowed money from his father-in-law to cover the losses and continue to pay out the dividends, as if those particular holdings hadn't gone down with the rest of the market. And that served two purposes for him. One, it prevented the embarrassment of having lost everybody their money. And two, it created this instant mystique around him as somebody who somehow could defy the market forces. And that feeling, I mean, they call it in the financial world a wizard, somebody who's able to beat the market that way. And that reputation, the combination of that reputation of being a wizard and of a terror of the embarrassment of being a failure in the way that his father had, I think combined to encourage him to continue to do what he did in the 60s on a very small scale all through the course of his career. And I imagine, as is probably happening on a daily basis in the financial markets, that there's a gray area, and traders and money managers are skirting back and forth across the line of legality on a daily basis in very small and subtle ways. And I think he did that until the 88-89 crash, and he, by that time, his business was very big, and he tried it again on a much larger scale, and he couldn't recover.
But it begs the question, Ponzi schemes, historically, have only worked for a very short time for anybody that's done it. Why this Ponzi scheme, you think, from 1970s until 2008, the longest running Ponzi scheme, and the largest? This didn't last a year or 2 years. This lasted 30 plus years.
Well, it's debatable when it started. I think Diana seems to think it started in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe not quite as long as you're describing. It's really about the personality of a con man. Mm-hmm. And he had a great line, which was, "I don't need your money, and I don't want your money, and in fact, I don't have room for your money." Mm-hmm. And the whole his way of tempting people to put more and more money with him was by telling him that he didn't have the time and the space in his fund, and that he couldn't service the clients that he had if he were to take on another penny. And the only way that he would take on another penny is if that penny were worth $500 million. So it was, and he was a very... he had also managed to build this reputation of somebody who was in charge of all these regulatory organizations on Wall Street.
NASDAQ.
And so, the SEC were just completely baffled by it. I mean, the idea that there was that somebody who had chaired all of these organizations that were designed to be watchdog organizations, just, defied belief that that person could be operating this kind of scale of a fraud. So